of programs that don't work, and I want to go through the federal budget line by line, page by page. Programs that don't work, we should cut. Programs that we need, we should make them work better. Now, what is true is that Senator McCain and I have a difference in terms of the need to invest in America and the American people. I mentioned health care earlier. If we make investments now so that people have coverage, that we are preventing diseases, that will save on Medicare and Medicaid in the future. If we invest in a serious energy policy, that will save in the amount of money we're borrowing from China to send to Saudi Arabia. If we invest now in our young people and their ability to go to college, that will allow them to drive this economy into the 21st century. But what is absolutely true is that once we get through this economic crisis and some of the specific proposals to get us out of this slump, then we're not going to be able to go back to our profligate ways. And we're going to have to embrace a culture and an ethic of responsibility, all of us, corporations, the federal government, and individuals out there who may be living beyond their means.
Senator. Well, thank you, Bob. I just want to get back to this home ownership. During the Depression era, we had a thing called a home ownership loan corporation, and they went out and bought up these mortgages, and people were able to stay in their homes, and eventually the values of those homes went up, and they actually made money. And by the way, this was a proposal made by Senator Clinton not too long ago. So obviously, if we can start increasing home values, then there will be creation of wealth.
But the question is, what are you going to
well, second of all, energy independent. We have to have nuclear power. We have to stop sending $700 billion a year to countries that don't like us very much. It's wind, tide, solar, natural gas, nuclear, offshore drilling, which Senator Obama has opposed. And the point is that we become energy independent, and we will create millions of jobs in America. Okay, what would I cut? I would have, first of all, across-the-board spending freeze, okay? That some people say that's a hatchet, and then I would get out a scalpel, okay? Because we have presided over the largest increase. We've got to have new direction for this country. We have presided over the largest increase in government since the Great Society. Government spending has gone completely out of control. $10 trillion debt we're giving to our kids, $500 billion we owe China. I know how to save billions of dollars in defense spending. I know how to eliminate programs. I have fought against, well, one of them would be a marketing assistance program. Another one would be a number of subsidies for ethanol. I oppose subsidies for ethanol because I thought it distorted the market and created inflation. Senator Obama supported those subsidies. I would eliminate the tariff on imported sugarcane-based ethanol from Brazil. I know how to save billions. I saved the taxpayer $6.8 billion by fighting a deal for a couple of years, as you might recall. It was a sweetheart deal between an aircraft manufacturer, DOD, and people ended up in jail. But I would fight for a line item veto, and I would certainly veto every earmarked pork barrel bill. Senator Obama has asked for nearly $1 billion in pork barrel earmarked projects, including $3 million for an overhead projector in a planetarium in his hometown. That's not the way we cut. We'll cut out all the pork.
Well, look, I think that we do have a disagreement about across-the-board spending freeze. It sounds good. It's proposed periodically. It doesn't happen. And, in fact, across-the-board spending freeze is a hatchet. And we do need a scalpel because there's some programs that don't work at all. There's some programs that are underfunded. And I want to make sure that we are focused on those programs that work. Now, Senator McCain talks a lot about earmarks. That's one of the centerpieces of his campaign. Earmarks account for 0.5% of the total federal budget. There's no doubt that the system needs reform, and there are a lot of screwy things that we end up spending money on, and they need to be eliminated. But it's not going to solve the problem. Now, the last thing I think we have to focus on is a little bit of history, just so that we understand what we're doing going forward. When President Bush came into office, we had a budget surplus, and the national debt was a little over $5 trillion. It has doubled over the last 8 years, and we are now looking at a deficit of well over $500 billion. So one of the things that I think we have to recognize is pursuing the same kinds of policies that we pursued over the last 8 years is not going to bring down the deficit. And frankly, Senator McCain voted for 4 out of 5 of President Bush's budgets. We've got to take this in a new direction. That's why I propose this budget.
Do either of you think you can balance the budget in 4 years? You have said previously you thought you could, Senator McCain.
Sure I do.
Do you still do that?
Yeah. Senator Obama, I'm not President Bush. If he wanted to run against President Bush, he should have run 4 years ago. I'm going to give a new direction to this economy in this country. Senator Obama talks about voting for budgets. He voted twice for a budget resolution that increases the taxes on individuals making $42,000 a year. Of course we can take a hatchet and a scalpel to this budget. It's completely out of control. The mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg, just imposed an across-the-board spending freeze on New York City. They're doing it all over America because they have to balance their budgets. I will balance our budgets, and I will get them, and I will reduce this. We can do it with this kind of job creation of energy independence. Now look, Americans are hurting tonight, and they're angry, and I understand that, and they want a new direction. I can bring them in that direction by eliminating spending. Senator Obama talks about the budgets I voted for. He voted for the last 2 budgets that had $24 billion more in spending than the budget that the Bush administration proposed. He voted for the energy bill that was full of goodies for the oil companies that I opposed. So the fact is, let's look at our record, Senator Obama. Let's look at it as graded by the National Taxpayers Union and the Citizens Against Government Waste and the other watchdog organizations. I have fought against spending. I have fought against special interests. I have fought for reform. You'll have to tell me one time when you have stood up with the leaders of your party on one single major issue.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that was put out there, so let me try to address it. First of all, in terms of standing up to the leaders of my party, the first major bill that I voted on in the Senate was in support of tort reform, which wasn't very popular with trial lawyers, a major constituency in the Democratic Party. I support charter schools and pay for performance for teachers. Doesn't make me popular with the teachers union. I support clean coal technology. Doesn't make me popular with environmentalists. So I've got a history of reaching across the aisle. Now, with respect to a couple of things Senator McCain said, the notion that I voted for a tax increase for people making $42,000 a year has been disputed by everybody who's looked at this claim that Senator McCain keeps on making. Even Fox News disputes it. And that doesn't happen very often when it comes to accusations about me. So the fact of the matter is that if I occasionally mistaken your policies for George Bush's policies, it's because on the core economic issues that matter to the American people, on tax policy, on energy policy, on spending priorities, you have been a vigorous supporter of President Bush. Now, you've shown independence, commendable independence, on some key issues like torture, for example, and I give you enormous credit for that. But when it comes to economic policies, essentially what you're proposing is 8 more years of the same thing, and it hasn't worked. And I think the American people understand it hasn't worked. We need to move in a new direction.
All right. Let me just say that.
About 30 seconds.
But it's very clear that I have disagreed with the Bush administration. I have disagreed with leaders of my own party. I've got the scars to prove it, whether it be bringing climate change to the floor of the Senate for the first time, whether it be opposition to spending and earmarks, whether it be the issue of torture, whether it be the conduct of the war in Iraq, which I vigorously opposed, whether it be on fighting the pharmaceutical companies, on Medicare prescription drugs importation, whether it be fighting for an HMO patient's Bill of Rights, whether it be the establishment of the 9/11 Commission. I have a long record of reform and fighting through on the floor of the United States Senate.
All right.
Senator Obama, your argument for standing up to the leaders of your party isn't very convincing.
All right. We're going to move to another question. And the topic is leadership in this campaign. Both of you pledged to take the high road in this campaign, yet it has turned very nasty. Senator Obama, your campaign has used words like erratic, out of touch, lie, angry, losing his bearings to McCain. Senator McCain, your commercials have included words like disrespectful, dangerous, dishonorable. He lied. Your running mate said he palled around with terrorists. Are each of you tonight willing to sit at this table and say to each other's face what your campaigns and the people in your campaigns have said about each other? And Senator McCain, you're first.
Well, this has been a tough campaign. It's been a very tough campaign. And I know from my experience in many campaigns that if Senator Obama had responded to my urgent request to sit down and do town hall meetings and come before the American people, we could have done at least 10 of them by now. When Senator Obama was first asked, he said, any place, any time. The way Barry Goldwater and Jack Kennedy agreed to do before the intervention of the tragedy at Dallas. So I think the tone of this campaign could have been very different. And the fact is, it's gotten pretty tough. And I regret some of the negative aspects of both campaigns. But the fact is that it has taken many turns which I think are unacceptable. One of them happened just the other day when a man I admire and respect, I've written about him, Congressman John Lewis, an American hero, made allegations that Sarah Palin and I were somehow associated with the worst chapter in American history. Segregation, deaths of children in church bombing, George Wallace. That to me was so hurtful. And Senator Obama, you didn't repudiate those remarks. Every time there's been an out-of-bounds remark made by a Republican, no matter where they are, I have repudiated them. I hope that Senator Obama will repudiate those remarks that were made by Congressman John Lewis. Very unfair and totally inappropriate. So I want to tell you, we will run a truthful campaign. This is a tough campaign. And it's a matter of fact that Senator Obama has spent more money on negative ads than any political campaign in history, and I can prove it. And Senator Obama, when he said, and he signed a piece of paper that said he would take public financing for his campaign if I did, that was back when he was a long-shot candidate, you didn't keep your word. And we looked into the camera and debate with Senator Clinton and said, I will sit down and negotiate with John McCain about public financing before I make a decision. You didn't tell the American people the truth because you didn't. And that's an unfortunate part. Now we have the highest spending by Senator Obama's campaign than any time since Watergate.
All right. Well, look, I think that we expect presidential campaigns to be tough. I think that if you look at the record and the impressions of the American people, Bob, your network just did a poll showing that 2/3 of the American people think that Senator McCain's running a negative campaign versus 1/3 of mine. And 100%, John, of your ads, 100% of them have been negative. Wow, it absolutely is true. And now, I think the American people are less interested in our hurt feelings during the course of the campaign than addressing the issues that matter to them so deeply. And there is nothing wrong with us having a vigorous debate like we're having tonight about health care, about energy policy, about tax policy. That's the stuff that campaigns should be made of. The notion, though, that because we're not doing town hall meetings, that justifies some of the ads that have been going up. Not just from your own campaign directly, John, but 527s and other organizations that make some pretty tough accusations. Well, I don't mind being attacked for the next 3 weeks. What the American people can't afford, though, is 4 more years of failed economic policies. And what they deserve over the next 4 weeks is that we talk about what's most pressing to them, the economic crisis. Senator McCain's own campaign said publicly last week that if we keep on talking about the economic crisis, we lose. So we need to change the subject. And I would love to see the next 3 weeks devoted to talking about the economy, devoted to talking about healthcare, devoted to talking about energy, and figuring out how the American people can send their kids to college. And that is something that I would welcome. But it requires, I think, a recognition that politics as usual, has been practiced over the last several years, is not solving the big problems here in America.
Well, if you'll turn on the television, as I watched the Arizona Cardinals defeat the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday, every other ad was an attack ad on my health care plan. And any objective observer has said it's not true. You're running ads right now that say